This is Duke University.
Escúchame, marinero, y dime, ¿qué sabes de él? Era gallardo y altanero, y era más rubio que la miel. Mira su nombre de extranjero, escrito aquí sobre mi piel. Si te lo encuentras.
You are listening to Spanish performer Conchita Piquer. Her music is the subject of the award-winning book Survival Songs by Duke University professor Stephanie Sieburth. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Stephanie, you spent 10 years researching Piquer's theatrical songs, and they were popular with both the winning and losing sides of the Spanish Civil War. You argue in your book that this music helped the defeated cope with the chronic terror, loss, and grief, both from the Spanish Civil War and the Franco regime. What drew you to be so fascinated by this part of Spanish history?
Well, I had always been fascinated by the Spanish Civil War because Spain was the first country to put up resistance to a fascist coup, and it became a symbol of anti-fascist resistance for the whole world in the late 1930s. Now, those who resisted and lost the war, called the defeated, paid dearly for their resistance. During and after the war, tens of thousands of executions were carried out by General Francisco Franco's fascist regime. This is the period called the Time of Silence, when those who spoke out against the dictatorship were tortured or simply disappeared, never to be seen again. 120,000 bodies lie in mass graves to this day. Spain has more disappeared people than any other country except Cambodia.
That is a shocking statistic. But of all the music that was present at that time, what really drew you to Piquer's music?
Well, I'd always wondered how the defeated coped with the persecution and the hunger. Then I read this memoir, published right after Franco's death, and in it a leading Spanish writer recalled that in the 1940s a song was not just an object to be consumed lightly, but a fundamental tool for survival, and that people sucked all the juice out of their songs. And many Spanish intellectuals had singled out Piquer as the performer whose songs were most crucial to their survival during the period. The idea that songs could help so many people to survive just grabbed me, and it wouldn't let me go.
In your book, you argue that Piquer's music was a form of grief counseling, in essence, and that it gave the defeated Spanish citizens a way to mourn that was safe. Can you talk about that?
Well, human beings need rituals of mourning in order to assimilate a death. But the defeated weren't allowed to show any sign of mourning for their dead, to give them any kind of funeral service. So we know how deep their pain was because of what's going on today in Spain. In the year 2000, the relatives of the dead started a movement to find the bodies and rebury them. Here we see an elderly woman crying at the site where she believes her brothers are buried. They were killed in 1937. We see other survivors holding up photos of their executed relatives as they stand beside the excavation sites. They're keeping faith with their dead by searching for their remains. I found parallels between what the characters in Piquer's songs were going through and what the defeated were going through. When they sang those songs, they were actually singing their own feelings. Piquer's songs were sad, bitter stories of fallen women, marginalized and judged by society, but retaining their dignity and their integrity as they suffered. Piquer gave life to these characters in a way that was unforgettable. Now, the most famous song of the 1940s and 50s was called Tattoo. It was about a nameless woman who loved a foreign sailor. When he disappears on a boat and is gone without a trace, she's inconsolable. She wanders the ports asking the sailors for news of him, and no one will tell her if he's alive or dead. She tattoos his name on her arm and declares that until she's found him, she'll search for him without resting.
Ya tú me has olvidado, en cambio yo no te olvidé, y hasta que no te haya encontrado, sin descansar, te buscaré.
I believe that in the 1940s, when people couldn't search for their dead, the defeated kept faith with them by singing this fictional story. It was a safe way to mourn. Singing along with Piquer was actually like psychotherapy. A patient in therapy does painful emotional work under the guidance and protection of a therapist. The defeated were actually doing the same thing with the guidance that Piquer's voice provided. Now, this concept of grief therapy goes well beyond the case of Spain. Most people can't afford psychotherapy. I believe that popular music is one of the most potent and easily available ways for people to work through deep emotional pain, and that applies here in the US as well. Even here, we hide our grieving. We're expected to get right back to normal after a loss like a death or a divorce. I think that people use popular music to mourn here, too.
When your book was translated into Spanish and republished in 2016, you did a book tour in Spain, and you had an opportunity to meet with Spanish scholars, individuals who had experienced the Franco regime, and also family members of Conchita Piquer. Can you talk about that?
It was an amazing experience, and it was also really emotional. Conchita Piquer was a very beloved figure for many Spaniards. But some of the ones who were against Franco had associated her coplas with his dictatorship. They hadn't known about the crucial role that Piquer's songs had played for those who were persecuted. Many people told me that I had given them back a piece of their history that had been taken away from them.
Él vino en un barco de nombre extranjero. Lo encontré en el puerto un anochecer, cuando el blanco faro sobre los veleros su beso de plata